What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. I'm your host, Logan Freeman, and today we're joined by Juan De Luna, managing partner at Stroft Capital. Now, Juan and I have had the pleasure of chatting for about an hour previous to this, and I said, hold the show. We have to get Juan on the show to talk about everything artificial intelligence, data centers, because JLL just recently put out some reporting that says nearly 100 gigawatts of new data centers will be added between 2026 and 2030, which is doubling global capacity. But I've been watching Juan on LinkedIn since our conversation, and he's actually really nuanced in regards to actually how much of that is going to happen, what's the impact that's going to have on commercial real estate. But this caught my eye. The sector is experiencing an infrastructure investment supercycle requiring up to $3 trillion by 2030, which is just wild. So I'm excited to have Juan here today. He advises on strategic investments across infrastructure, technology, and emerging opportunities. And Juan has a unique lens on the AI infrastructure supercycle, site selection, and where smart capital is moving next. Now, our team here in Kansas City, we currently have 7 land deals that are actively working. Some of those are in the data center side of things, which we're going to talk about today. But we also have land that's available for industrial outdoor storage, for multifamily, for retail. We've got a lot of land. You can talk to Joe and Nick and myself on our team about the land that we have available. You know, I always said that like land is a tough an asset class to be a broker on. But if you understand David Ricardo's law of economic rent, and you understand residual land value analysis, and you have pricing based off of those things, what can be built, how long is it going to take, how much is it going to cost, and then you can reverse engineer a land cost that makes sense in the path of progress. Those are the types of land deals that we are doing. We are also working on senior housing. Mitch Case is working on senior housing. We have an active 55 plus community here in Kansas City and a number of other opportunities. You can head over to our website, www.mwcreadvisors.com. Like I mentioned, Juan is the managing partner of Stroft Capital. Juan, where's the name come from? Let's just start there.
Man, you know, it's interesting. So that name, years ago, before I even started the company, it was just a name that it was kind of really synonymous. I was like, I wanted something that just stood out, that wasn't like immediately out there. So it kind of just became like more of a branding thing. It was like, like Soft Capital, or initially before I started when I started the company, the initial intent was getting into the land development side for subdivisions and for home builders and stuff like that. And so I built a lot of resources and tools, but anyways, the name essentially just stuck, and I ran with it, and it had a really, really good branding to it, and so here we are.
Well, love the cowboy hat there as well, Juan. Again,
I have it right here.
Juan focuses on strategic investments, infrastructure opportunities, and capital markets advisory. And he's got experience spanning finance, site selection, and emerging technology trends. And he truly does bring a unique perspective on how the data centers and AI is reshaping real estate, power demand, and global infrastructure strategy. So Juan, give us the quick version of your journey. How the heck did you end up in the data center and infrastructure world?
You know, it's a great question. So going back on my background, so I've got about 9 years of data center industry experience. A lot of I have a heavy IT background, right? But I initially it was interesting. So I had gotten the opportunity to go and jump into a data center role, and I was doing system administration, system engineering at the time. And, it's funny. I was like, I remember, the opportunity came up, and I was like, okay, well, let me go and, jump on this and see what it's about. Right. And I still remember a whole bunch of my colleagues, because I did a lot of automation work, and I was like, no, don't do it. You're going to lose your skill sets. You're going to lose, and so I kind of tuned all that out, and just said, you're going into a dying industry. I said, it's all good. Don't worry about it. I'm in good shape. I jumped right into it. And, I get involved into the operations of a data center, maintaining it, and then bringing it up to standards and code. So essentially, this data center was, first data center I got dropped into. It was interesting. So it was a data center that was mismanaged. It didn't have proper things in place and to take care of all the underlying issues, both operational and capacity wise. So then I started with that one, and it started with an active site and running through an optimization request, right? Later on, that project turned into becoming a data center that was highly looked at as one of those prime sites. And then afterwards, the retrofits came around, and so over my years, right, I've developed a keen skill set to evaluate these data centers. So I can walk into most data centers and just by training of the ears, right, I can walk in and just feeling the dynamic of a room, I can tell something's wrong. And it's not to say that it's I have the answers immediately, but when something's off in a data center, whether it be the cooling strategies in place or even how the fan speeds and everything is situated throughout the data center, because you're managing smaller fan speeds on IT equipment when it's ingesting that air. So I've taken data centers from PUE, which is power usage effectiveness. So that is a rating scale that the industry uses to rate how efficient a data center is, right? At how much is going on power usage to the IT versus the facility aspect.
Absolutely.
So I've taken data centers from the typical like 2.5, 2.6 range, and I've been able to optimize those to in the healthy 1.7s, 1.5s, even in some cases to the 1.4, 1.35 levels, by doing different optimization strategies and stuff of that nature.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we got our first question in, so make sure to drop your questions in around data centers. We've got an expert here, so everybody who's live, drop them in the comments. Our team is navigating those, and we'll get those questions up. But first one coming in is, with your background and on site selection, what perspective do you think most people in real estate are missing right now around data centers?
I think the biggest concern that I'm seeing is the aspect of understanding the technology, right? A lot of the clients that I have that I provide advisory for, even from the site selection standpoint, is you're not building a warehouse per se, right? Where some of these things are small controlled environments. You're building an ecosystem. It's a facility that has various components to it, and from a hosting perspective, right? Your tenant is a little more scrutiny on demand, strictly because there's a very large millions of dollars worth of investment made in infrastructure, and then that all that equipment's sitting in your data center. So I think understanding the tier rating levels of every facility is important, and that's the one piece that's missing from the site selection area. Another is the general concerns wrapped around the risk, right? Everything in the data center realm, even in my past 9 years, has always been around risk, right? How do we mitigate these risks? And if we can't mitigate them, then it's something that we should probably look towards not acquisitioning or approaching.
Yeah.
So
well, this market is obviously expanding extremely fast, right? And a lot of talks around AI software, but I feel like the real story is becoming this physical infrastructure, right? And I think that report that JLL put out saying it's a infrastructure supercycle really double clicks on that and puts the button on that front. So I mean, why is that the case here? And what does that mean for real estate and site selection, this physical infrastructure side of this business that people are, I mean, it's hard to fathom, right? The numbers that are being thrown out there. So let's talk about how, this is expanding fast, but not cleanly.
Right. So the timing to market, right, came at a time where industry is trying to fill in the gaps, right? There's a lot of disconnect traditionally between the facility aspect side of things and the IT, right? That's been one of those industries that's kind of been hard to gap, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of providers out there, and even NVIDIA had to essentially grab two major players. For example, they grabbed Vertiv and they grabbed APC, and they basically they're going to these larger firms and they're saying, "Hey, let's come together. Let's talk about how we're going to get to 2030, right?" The Open Compute project actually pushed out that by 2030 they're expecting at least 1 megawatt power usage on the per rack level basis. To give you perspective on that, just a couple of years ago, before the boom took place, your typical compute rack was taking about 30 to anywhere from 20 to 30 kilowatts of power. Well, that's almost 10x already,
Yeah.
and even further beyond that. So you start looking at the extremes on this. Is from a data center standpoint, it puts a lot of strain on how you design the facility, because now you've added additional zeros to the usage on power. Well, now I have to build in redundancy into that number, and redundancy is not cheap, right? It's expensive. The further up you go in tiers past the tier 2, tier 3 level of a rating per facility, the more expensive it gets, because you're building a facility that has to be fault tolerant to any and all risks that take place, and that includes all of its sub-level systems too, right? So you can have I have one client that they had a data center that had tier 4 power all over the facility, which was great. It's phenomenal. 96 hours of uptime, great. As soon as I started opening the questions about what about your cooling, how is that set up? That's when they started realizing, it's I don't think we spent that much time or commitment on that aspect. And so, well, you could have a tier 4 power all the way you want, but if your lowest subsystem that's supporting that infrastructure is at a tier 2 or a tier 1 level, that's what the facility is rated at. And if you're hosting stuff for customers, let's say there's a computer technology company that's using space in your data center. They're going to want to know about that. They're going to want to know, well, what kind of rating is your facility? I mean, what kind of redundancy is in place? Because if you call a data center a tier 4 facility, they're expecting by industry norms, they're expecting 26 minutes of downtime all year long, and that's just the expectation, right? So if you have that in place, you need to make sure even your sub-level systems are also in line with that same redundancy architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speed to market now depends less on demand and more on site readiness, power, land, permitting, utility coordination, community acceptance, right? And so, I mean, the opportunity is real, but obviously not every site can support the business case for data centers. And that's where you step in and really support. I mean, I think that when you showed me an example of the fast pass, for example, that was, just really enlightening. I mean, I was writing so many notes around clean power and dirty power, and my fingers just couldn't go fast enough. We got another listener question in, though. This came a little early, but I knew it was going to happen. Where do you think we are in this cycle of data centers? Are we in the early innings right now, middle innings? Are we already overheated in this sector? What's your take on that?
I don't think we're overheated yet. I would say we're kind of in between the middle and the beginning stages, probably getting closer towards the middle.
Okay.
And I say that because there's going to be a phase where we're going to get to the optimization side. And again, this is where, bread and butter for me is optimizing the data centers. At some point, technology is getting better every day, right? And as I'm starting to see some of these data center sites come online, some of the technology, even that they spent like a year or 2 years in time frame commissioning these sites and getting them operationally ready and in place. Some of that technology has to, if you didn't plan in scale, unfortunately, you're looking at a facility that would probably be out of date in a couple of years.
Wow.
And that's the expectation, right? But I still think right now we're in a land grab stage still.
Yes.
So very much so. There's active site selection still taking place. A lot of it is wrapped around the power capacity part, which is not It should not be. It is a primary concern, but it's not the only concern, right? There's other things that take place when you're assessing a site for proper due diligence and making sure that the site is actually viable for a data center development project.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about next, right? Why so many projects stall, slip, or stop, right? I mean, from the outside, people assume if the money is there, the project gets built. But why is that often so wrong?
Well, you hit that right on like the face of it is the understanding of all the bottlenecks that are taking place. Just imagine all the moving pieces that have to work together in order to get to the finish line, right? Everything from entitlements to if you're using the utility company's power, you got to wait for the queue. You got to figure out where you are in line. Do you have a will serve letter in place? The other thing is telecommunications, right? If you don't have fiber optics, let's say you don't have redundant fiber optics. Hey, well, that's going to play a factor into your redundancy factor for the tier rating of your facility, right? So we go back towards understanding the technology again, right? We're back towards understanding the tier rating of a facility, because if you can understand the basic important high topic items that you need for a data center, you can start driving your decisions for that site selection and for that project ultimately to shape it out to make sure it actually reaches the finish line. Right now, there's approximately out of all the projects that are taking place, a little over 50% of them have either been canceled or delayed. And that's, stringent. Doesn't matter if you're a major player like Microsoft or Google or a large land developer that, is deciding to go out there and build out these sites to lease out the space. There's a lot of regulatory resistance right now, mainly, and I think we discussed this a little while back, is what I'm seeing right now is getting ahead of misinformation is important, because, for example, you can have a county that the commissioner, doesn't understand data centers all that much, and they see bad news on TV or wherever it is, or they're through an article, and so they're already kind of shutting the doors, right? Even for the local community is starting to push back on these things like water restrictions. In tight water restricted communities, I had one commissioner actually called data centers a large refrigerator, and they take up a whole bunch of water. Well, they can, but if you designed the data center in such a way that you don't need to, that part's all on the cooling aspect of things. How are you handling the cooling aspect of it? If you're in a water restricted area, there's other ways to cool your appliances. There's immersion cooling solutions. There's even and those are all closed loop systems. So those are like a fill it once and it's a closed loop system and it's done. No more usage on water from there. Now, if you're using evaporative, that's kind of more in the realm of, hey, I need to have more water available, but don't expect for the utility company to fork up the money to give you, 1,000, 3,000 gallons of water per minute. That's just not going to happen, right? That still comes out of the developer's pocket. And so, those are some of those regulatory items. From the cost escalation part is, a lot of developers I'm seeing are going towards the natural gas because it's cheaper. They can do on-site generation, right? And that's great, right? But now you have to start looking into how you're going to manage that power in the facility, right? Some developers are having to go into it, kind of by force, right? Is, hey, well, I'm not a power generator, company. I want to build a data center, but they have to essentially go this route because there's abundance of natural gas, and instead of either I can get speed to market today or I can wait a couple of years until the queue actually catches up and the infrastructure is upgraded.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that misinformation, right? I mean, the headlines is what everybody sees. And I think that a lot of it is, hey, these projects are getting highly incentivized, right? And that's always going to have pushback from the public, right? And that part is understandable, right? And you think about it, I don't know how many jobs, a project would typically create, but the idea being, well, you're going to go build $1 billion data center, but it's only going to have 20 to 30 employees, right? And then the second part is my utility costs are going to go up. Those are the two main headlines that I continue to see over and over again. What would you say about that in regards to data centers? And how would we address those concerns? And is there any place where people can go get maybe some real facts around how there's been some positive case studies of these things?
Yeah, so I think right now, just because of the headlines that are taking place, a lot of developers are having to shift their strategies right now to include, the public in their current, projects to, basically to cross out some of those, misinformation items before they become problems to a point where you can't get your project approved, right?
I mean, is that data, is it rooted in facts? I mean, what's true and what's not?
So on the true aspect of it, right? Yes, a data center that's getting built out is going to create a lot of jobs. Okay. From the facility standpoint, depending on the strategy, right? There's lights out facilities. There's fully automated systems that are now being put into place. For example, feel free to go look up the digital twin, but what it is essentially they built out a solution that has AI agents incorporated into the solution. And what it does is it basically manages as a facility, right? It takes care of all the infrastructure, failure analysis. It kind of keeps on track of maintenance to make sure that, if something's about to break down, those analytics are already there. So you start looking at the overall jobs, right, of on-site personnel that are actually taking care of it. Yeah, they do submit and they say, hey, it's going to be 30, 40 people. But the other aspect that they're not looking at also is all the contract companies, the preventative maintenance companies that are coming out to service the gear. Those are also additional jobs that are not included in this, in that count, because those are separate outside from the developer standpoint. So, for example, you've got a major data center facility. I can tell you right now, as an operator, I'm not in the HVAC business. I'm not in the UPS business. I'm not in the generator business. I'm in the data center business. So most operators are going to subcontract that work out. They're going to subcontract it out to the mechanical HVAC company. They've got a service level agreement in place for preventive maintenance, either quarterly, monthly, whatever it may be, right? Those are still jobs that are still being created and still maintained in the market as long as that data center is operational.
Absolutely. It's the ripple effect, right?
Right.
And that's why commercial real estate, and I'll just say this, why the 1031 exchange has happened and stayed around for so long, right? It's always on the legislative bulletin, hey, we're going to take it away. Well, if you do that, then you got to think about the trickle effect and the ripple effect that you're going to have on all of the people that serve all of the transactions that happen, property management, contractors, right? All of those different components. So I do see that for sure happening. Now, how about this? Have you seen any, and this is a question because I've had some conversations with some more rural areas, right? And I think I saw an article that came out that said, these secondary and tertiary markets are now becoming kind of a hotspot for data centers. Is this type of development, this type of project, a way to revitalize certain locations? And I know you're down in Texas, so I'm sure there's some very rural places down in Texas.
Oh yeah.
But could this be a really big trigger for people to say, hey, if this happens in our community, it's going to bring this tax revenue. We can train our community on the level of high skill professionals that need to work in this space. Are there any case studies or ideas around how that could support the local communities that these do come in?
So right now there's a lot of those discussions taking place. For example, there's a project out in Abilene that everybody's familiar with, is the Stargate, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of those projects that they essentially negotiated a discount on the property taxes for that facility. But you start looking at the aspect of it, you're generating that income, but you're also bringing the local community and the skill set and those individuals to come and move to these places, right? Because the work and the demand is still going to be there, right? Out in Georgia, same situation. There was another data center that's being developed, but and it came around to I guess it halted one question. It was like, hey, well, there's no HVAC company that's willing to service gear in this particular part of Georgia. Well, that opens up opportunities and windows for HVAC companies that decide to pick up shop and move over to these places, right?
Absolutely.
So those incentives definitely bring bring positive values to communities for sure.
Most definitely. Well, let's talk about, you call this the fast pass, right? Your Stroff
Right.
Capital site selection, right? Maybe there's some folks that are brokers in the industry. They may be sitting on farms, or they have an uncle or a grandpa or grandma that own a bunch of land. What problem are you trying to solve when creating this process for people to say, man, is my land available to be a data center?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, the fast pass kind of came as it kind of just came as a theme, because most people were saying, hey man, with all this data, it's almost it gives you a decision of confidence, right? So what I've done with my fast pass, what it is I've built out various tools. All of them are backed by the standards from ANSI BICSI. Myself, I'm a certified ANSI BICSI data center design consultant. So what I've done is I've taken industry norms, industry standards, and BICSIs, and I've incorporated those items into a essentially a fast pass availability to give you a structured report on how to essentially go about your site to see if it actually makes sense or not. Developers love these just because a fast pass, I can get you this in about 2 weeks in turnaround time. Whereas most developers, I have one that told me, he's like, I couldn't get that kind of level of information in like 4, 5, 6 months. And it's like,
Wow.
yeah. So, so you start looking at, the fast pass, right? You're at an amusement park, and you're like, hey, I don't want to wait in the line for an hour and a half. I just want to get straight, and I want to go on as many times as I want, right? So most of those developers are looking for that fast pass to say, all right, well, can I put a data center site here? How does it hold up against industry standards? What kind of things do I have to worry about? What kind of issues may I encounter if I acquisition this site, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even from the zoning perspective, how long is it going to take to zone this stuff? What is the recommended zoning for this site if I decide to go through with it? Even soils information, right? What can I expect in soils if I go and I spend money on a phase 1, right? Feasibility study. So what it is it's a way to gauge whether you need to spend more money on this, or if you just need to get up and walk away from it.
Absolutely.
And and there's a lot of sites that that I would never pass them. It's like, and even my tools won't even pass them. It's like, okay, it's like, for example, building next to an airport. That's no, not going to happen. Just strictly because there's a lot of other concerns that revolve around the risk for the data center, and it's not just an airplane falling out of the sky, right? There's concerns of the dust, the pollutants, the exhaust that's coming off of those planes, right? I had one data center operator call me initially for an optimization study for their cooling, and I was like, okay. I was like, well, it started as that, right? And start digging back and pulling back the layers on, well, what's happening? What's going on? And, we just went into service. It's been 2 years, and now they're telling me I got to replace all my HVAC gear, and it's like, okay, something's not adding up, right? So starting to look around, and planning out travel, right? And I kind of look at the site, and I zoom out. I'm like, what's going on with this? And I was like, so I looked up, and it's like, oh, I know what your problem is. It was like, you're next to an airport.
Yeah.
And and so that I called him back, and it's like, so let me guess. I was like, all your gear's corroded on the rooftop, right? I'm like, how did you know? Did you visit the site? I'm like, no. I was like, I looked it up on the map, and this is one of those issues that should have been determined very, very at the beginning of the site selection phase, because they just immediately thought, hey, there's plenty of power here available. I'm going to build a site here, and we'll make it work. You can bulletproof a facility as much as you want, but you're still not going to change the fact of where it's located, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are a lot of those key areas that you have to look at from suitability. I know you had also mentioned that we had discussed was power quality. That's another issue, right? So let's kind of open that can of worms on that portion of it. So when it comes to power quality, right? Why do you care, and why does it matter, right? So let's think about it this way. Let's say I decide I want to go ahead and visit out and go buy a data center site, and I'm going to go ahead and it's right next to a manufacturing plant that creates a lot of distortion and noise on the line. Well, now I've got to spend more money on grounding my facility, right? Spending more money on HRGs to try and reduce that noise on the line. But ultimately, I'm still going to get dirty power if there's ever a power spike or if there's ever a single phase on that line, right? So when that happens, you're essentially feeding that dirty power into the data center. When it gets into the data center, it touches all of your IT equipment. So if I'm a manufacturer, right, and this happens, okay, more often than not. Let's say I have, let's say $20-30 million worth of IT gear, right? Just for example. And then all of a sudden there's a power spike that takes place to the data center, and there's a whole bunch of dirty power that got introduced to it, and it went through right to the equipment. And there's messed up motherboards, messed up, chips, whatever it may be. Well, as a IT owner, as a system owner, right, I would say, all right, well, shoot, the IT gear messed up. It's all good. I got a warranty on it. I was like, I'll just call the manufacturer. I'll have them send their rep out and have them replace it. Well, the rep is going to come out and they're gonna run their initial tests on it. If they find out it was as a result of poor power quality, they're going to void the warranty on that gear.
Wow. Yeah.
So
we're talking about potentially hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and damages. So and that's not even, we're just talking about the IT gear. We haven't even talked about, like, let's say if it completely, destroys that gear and the data that's in it, right? If you're hosting a customer that, has a reason to store data for large amounts of time, or they have sensitive data like healthcare data on there, I mean, someone's not going to be happy, right? And so you have to look at all those things from the get-go, is to say, okay, build around the technology side, and it's important to understand all the risks that the site is going to be privy to, and if there's ways to mitigate it, we try to find a way to mitigate those as best.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Well, head on over to stroftcapital.com. You can submit your project there, get a fast pass. We do have a listener question coming in. I'm going to put up on the screen here. So Colby Zaleski, thank you for being here. Thank you for your question. So Juan, he works closely with a couple contractors for a data center in his area. So would either of us consider the ripple effect of the construction jobs that are created from the ground up construction of a data center that a value to that community? In his area, it was kind of a two-faced, because they thought it was going to create 1,000 local jobs, but there's less than 5% of the local employees there. And he said, I should finish the question. Would either of us consider it to be a plus for a local community?
So anytime jobs are created, Colby, it's still a positive, right? Now there are some circumstances where getting skilled labor, right, is an intangible cost, even in the site selection part, right? If I can't get specific work skill sets into that area, then that site, it essentially becomes a site that we don't develop in, right? That's essentially how I advise my clients is, if I can't get, for example, HVAC techs at a suitable time to service HVAC gear at a data center, right? I had one client that they wanted to buy land. It was too rural. And so they, with the initial intent that they wanted to do a tier 3 level data center, and I said, well, because it is very rural, I was like, you're going to have to do a tier 4. And so, and again, dollar signs start showing up, and it's like, well, that's going to be expensive. I'm like, yes, but you have to understand is that the nearest HVAC company or service rep for the gear is 5 or 6 hours out in either direction, right? And that plays into a fact, again, where we go back to the tier ratings, right? And how the tier rating is going to shape your facility and your site selection criteria from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Colby, for that question. Great response, Juan. So for the average listener, can you simplify tier 3 versus tier 4 and explain, let's talk about why it matters.
So let's kind of start back. I did leave tier 1 and tier 2 out, but let's make a real easy explanation for this, okay? Let's say we both have cars in our driveway, right? Let's say you got a Toyota Camry. It's got 10,000 miles on it, right? And then you got a spare car. It's a let's say it's a pickup truck, right? So if my primary car breaks down, okay, and I didn't have that truck in my driveway, that's a tier 1, right? Now I have no vehicle to go to the grocery store or go do anything, right? Okay, tier 2 is where I have that +1. It's that +1 extra, redundancy, right? My car breaks down, no big deal. I'll take the truck, right? I can still get around, do my things, and repair my vehicle when it takes time, right? Once you get to the tier 3 and the tier level 4 ratings, you're starting to look at fault tolerance now in a whole different level. So now instead of having one Toyota and one pickup truck from, let's say it's a Dodge pickup truck or whatever, now we're doubling up what we have in the driveway. So now I may have 2 Toyota Camrys with the exact same mileage, 2 pickup trucks with the exact same mileage, same exact oil changes. And let's just say I run the mileage on both of them exactly the same. And that's exactly how you're treating a tier rated facility, right? The more redundancies you have in place to back up the gear, that's the difference between a tier 3 and a tier 4. Your tier 3 is going to be concurrent maintainability. So what that means is if I take out one of my HVAC units, let's say it's a crack or a chiller, the secondary will kick in and pick up the load. Operations will still continue. We'll be okay. Fault tolerant, which is your tier 4, is where, hey, I could lose one of these. I can lose 2 of these. I'll still be okay, right? I could lose something in between those other components. I'm fault tolerant. I'm confident that all of the additional components in the data center, including the valving, the double piping, et cetera, is going to hold up to make sure that that redundancy level is met. So basically, there's no issues with anything. If there's any kind of a problem, it can be addressed at a later time. It won't affect or impact the business continuity of the actual data center or its tenants, right? So, and that's why, again, I stress that fact is the site implications on your site selection matter, because if you pick out a site, like I said, that's too rural. Let's say there's only one telecommunications provider out there. Let's say there's a lot of, thunderstorms, lightnings that take place, and internet goes out. What do? You're supporting a customer that in a data center fashion. Telecommunications is one of the most important infrastructure items that you need. You can have redundant power, redundant cooling, all of that stuff in place, and the facility's operating and it's great. But if the internet's down, then your customer's still upset. There's still a level of expectation, right? So all those things need to be taken into consideration, right?
Absolutely. We left off tier 1 and tier 2 here. Is it because there's not a big demand for that level of data center right now?
So the reason I left tier 1 and tier 2 off of it is because we're talking about the AI side of things, right? Everybody's saying, hey, I want to go build out a hyperscale data center, whatever the case may be. Now, the tier 1 and the tier 2 is going to be dependent on your business goals, right? The operational goals of the company that's operating the data center. A tier 1 can be classified as easy as a comm closet. It could be, hey, I don't have redundant power in this thing, but it's enough to get my business office, that I have, like a medical office or something like that, running and operational, right? Doesn't need the high end stuff where it's like, okay, this is going to impact, a lot of people, your user base, right? Because we're talking about the AI side of things, there is an impact to those services because they affect on a global scale, right? If I'm hosting, a system out of your data center, I ship all the equipment to you and we put it in your site and you tell me, hey, it's a tier 4 rated facility. You're in good shape. I'm like, oh, cool. So I'm relying on that facility to be up all the time, every time, because it's fault tolerant, right? That's what you tell me as part of it. But then again, all those items come back to the site considerations, right? What's the goal? What's the basis around the technology design? What are you building this data center for? And once you start answering those questions, you start realizing, tell you what, we can get away from tier 1 and tier 2. We need to stick around the tier 3, tier 4 level.
Most definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, let's talk about this real quick. I mean, there's been a lot of questions, a lot of headlines out there. People are getting some things right, but a lot of people are getting things wrong. So what do you think the biggest misconception that investors or developers have about data centers today?
Well, there's various. So for example, misconception. So incentives from states. States make it very attractive for data center developers to bring business into their states to boost the economy and provide incentives to local communities. And that's great. But developers should not rely on those, and those shouldn't be a driving factor when you're doing site selection for a data center project. Because let's say, for example, those incentives disappear. Does your deal still pencil out? Does the ROI change? What's the impact going to be when the site's fully operational, right? The other misconception is, I see a substation down the street. I'm pretty sure it has power. Wrong again, right? This is still where we get into those will serve letters. We start doing additional due diligence when we start asking the real questions, right? Again, there's so many misnomers and misconceptions about the data center side of things that cause a lot of ripple effects, even locally, right? Even some of these projects that are getting canceled, it had these items been identified in the early stages of the site selection criteria, investors wouldn't be, holding on to these facilities and now trying to figure out what they need to do with them, because now they can't build a data center on it, right?
Yeah, well said, man. I mean, I think that your quote really encapsulates this. It's, the best site isn't the cheapest site. It's the one that can actually get built, right? Certainty is what people are looking for here. Right. And I think the other unique component in this space is you're not just dealing with a lot of private capital. You're dealing with companies like the big five, the hyperscalers. These people have resources. They have the smartest people on staff looking at these things. So, it's very important to know if you are operating or wanting to operate in this space, you got to have your diligence kind of checked, before you go talk to them, because one, they're hard to get on the phone and get their attention because they're so busy. But two, they're going to be able to see through some BS really quickly, right? Which is why if you are holding on to land, you need to talk with Juan on saying, hey, man, this might be the right site. How do we get this packaged up in a way to give somebody some certainty that they can move forward on this? I truly do believe that this is a generational opportunity for a lot of people. I mean, I have worked on projects where it has turned out to be an once in a lifetime event for these landowners, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's an incredible opportunity for them to evaluate. But just saying, and this is kind of like, I'll say this, with the stadiums all moving in Kansas City, right? The Chiefs are moving to Kansas, the Royals are trying to move downtown, whatever it is. There's a lot of times where those landowners that are surrounding them say, well, my price just went up 10x because of this. And what they're not looking for is, all of the different components to actually still making that land and that land valuable and developable in the near term. So the fundamentals are very similar here. However, what I think is different with data centers is that the fundamentals still are true, but you're adding a very big layer of complexity of technology and of all of these other components that most real estate developers are not familiar with.
Right.
And that is a crucial component. And frankly, it's not easy unless you've been in this industry for 9 to 10 years to understand all of these things. And so these consultants like yourself being able to create some clarity for people is extremely important, and I think that's an incredible opportunity, but it also creates a higher barrier of entry to get into this side of the business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And this goes back to even the scenario with the guy building out that data center next to an airport.
Yes.
He's got a $35 million cap expenditure that he's got to carry on, every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. That'll break a pro forma pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Very quickly. Yeah. Trust me.
We're not talking about just like, hey man, I missed the roof or the roof needs to be replaced. We're talking about serious money whenever we get in here. I mean, it's a little bit crazy. All right, great. Well, let's move on to my favorite section of the show. Juan, what is your favorite book or podcast?
My favorite book is got to be mainly in the data center side of it, but I like the INSPIXI standards. But if we're talking about like just a favorite book, on my own hobbies, so I love the How to Be the Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Yes.
It's a great book. I think it was written by Keller Williams, I think.
Yeah. Gary Keller.
Yeah, Gary Keller. So yeah, I love that book. I mean, I read that book years ago, and it made a difference, change in my life for sure.
Most
Um,
definitely. Yeah.
and
It's a great book.
just looking at things from a different angle, right, from the investor side aspect of it. Um, and part of that, has also shaped me and who I am today, right, and where I'm sitting even in this industry right now.
Most definitely. Well, with all of this going on, the AI, the data centers, super cycle, the infrastructure super cycle, I've gotten pretty fascinated with the ideas that are put out there in regards to ethical and moral AI usage, right, in technology. And I've gone down some rabbit holes and some very interesting conversations and listening to a lot of people. And I think a lot of those points are valid. But what do you think? Like, if we were to come back here in 5 years, like, what's the trend that most people are underestimating right now? Because I feel like AI and data centers and all of this, we're just scratching the surface on understanding what this technology is going to do to our humanity, right? And so,
Right.
what is a trend that might be people might just be overlooking? Like, that's not going to happen.
Right. So I think there's going to be a shift, a dynamic shift, and even some of these larger companies, right, are starting to make they're doing a lot of layoffs and cuts, but it's not due to AIs replacing their job. I think these larger companies, what they're starting to realize now, and they're starting to require AI skills. So we're going from essentially you doing, and your productivity needs to start changing and shifting in a manner where you're starting to be more efficient to getting tasks done using AI as the driver, right? The workhorse driver. And even for example, even on the data center aspect of it, we see, hey, they're only reporting 30 or 45 jobs, for this, 100, 400 megawatt facility. Well, a lot of that has a lot of AI tools built into it to help the operators do their job efficiently and more effectively, right? Before, data centers of those sizes without AI, that you're talking hundreds of jobs, right? You're talking a large amounts of teams available on sites, and from all various types of resources that you need. Today, that's shifting. We're shifting towards the director side of things, where you're directing AI to do things, as opposed to you doing them yourself manually, as we used to before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, in regards to the biggest bottleneck ahead, is it power, is it land, or is it talent, or maybe something else?
I think it's all three of those.
Okay.
I think it's all three of those all combined, and it's all of them combined together is what I would call a perfect storm. You're going to see a lot of there's going to be bottlenecks with talent for sure, because a lot of even who was it? I think it was Lowe's or Home Depot. They even started putting out free trade course training, where they'll just trade you to free training for HVAC and electrical careers, stuff like that. We're starting to see them trying to fill that talent gap, right? On the power and land side, same situation kind of in a way, because if the power is available, then the proximity to the land is also another item. So you start seeing driving factors on price, right? Where you see these, astronomical purchases of land where they're in the several, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the per acre basis, and, sometimes even on the $1 million basis. But, some of those are strategically laid out. So, so in my opinion, all three.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever received, business-wise?
Business-wise, always show up. Always show up.
Up for every meeting, right?
Every meeting, yeah, because you if you stop learning, right, you're not growing, right? Even for me today, even with my years of experience as in data centers, I still have to continue to add skill sets into my Rolodex, right? Because in my back pocket, I have to make sure that when I'm providing advisory or consultancy to my clients, I want to make sure that they're getting the top-notch information that's available out in the marketplace today, and not something that was learned 10 or 13, 15 years ago.
Great advice there. Great advice. How do you define success?
Success is defined by you yourself I wouldn't say it's something that is tangible where, you relate it to compare it to dollar signs or availability. I think your success is dependent on those that you help, and those that are around you, right? Your network is your net worth.
Absolutely. Juan, this has been fascinating. Great conversation today. If people want to learn more about you, I've got your website here, stroftcapital.com. But where should they follow you? Are you active on social media?
Yeah, so feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, or shoot me or ping me a message. I'm always open to talk, discuss. I live and breathe this stuff every day.
Yeah,
more often than I should. But yeah, so yeah, I'm always open to talk, always open for conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Juan, thank you so much for being here today. If you guys are interested in speaking with myself or my team about Kansas City commercial real estate, land, data centers, industrial, multifamily, retail, owner users, just feel free to reach out to us. You can follow us on LinkedIn, or you can head over to our website, www.mwcreadvisors.com. Juan, thanks for sharing all of that information today about this ever-changing landscape, rapidly changing landscape, and I'm sure we're going to have you on again in a few months. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely, no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. We'll be back here later this week with another great guest. Thanks for being here.
All right, bye-bye.